And Cora, can I join with the Taoiseach and with others in expressing the Labour Party's sympathy for the families of those who lost their lives yesterday, and indeed one of whom was 41 years of age, which I think should be a reminder to everybody in Irish society that this is a virus that can affect all age groups. And indeed to join with the Taoiseach in congratulating, if I might say, one of our own in becoming President of the United States and his inauguration today. Taoiseach, the Labour Party are attempting to de-escalate the tensions that have been involved in the special education issue. We don't feel at this point that it is going to benefit anybody in finger-pointing or blaming or to join with the attempt to create division between special education teachers, SNAs and parents. However, I put to you, Taoiseach, that it's now time for you to get involved, because quite clearly Minister Foley and Minister Madigan have lost control of the situation. Now, we were quite supportive of Minister Foley and Minister Madigan in investigating the possibility of reopening schools, as you have quite rightly said, for certain cohorts of people. We believe that the closing of schools is a profoundly negative thing to happen to children. It profoundly negatively affects the most vulnerable of children, including those with additional needs, those in areas of disadvantage as well. However, from the start of this year, on January 6th, an announcement was made on school reopening with no consultation. And Taoiseach, please don't make liars of trade union leaders who say that they weren't consulted about the January 6th flat announcement. On January 14th, another announcement was made before an education debate in this House about the reopening of special schools and special classes. Again, no agreement. On January 15th, at 8 o'clock in the evening, a Friday evening, a letter was sent to every school in the country on the basis of reopening of special schools. Again, no agreement. And now, Taoiseach, even since last night, we had an extremely ill-advised communication from the department, with quotes from both ministers in it, which was pointing fingers all over the place. Both unions issued a joint communication saying that they were still at the table and still willing to talk. We have comments from Minister Foley this morning suggesting that comments made by one of the union leaders was disingenuous. And it has been said, Minister Madigan, making a comparison between this situation and the mother and baby homes, when last week she made a comment about non-SNA students being normal. We have been doing our best as a political entity to try to be constructive. So, Taoiseach, can I ask you, in the spirit of being constructive, that your office will now get centrally involved in this situation, that you will appreciate the severity of the situation, how dangerous it is for young people to be out of school for this length of time? Will you recognise that the entire reopening of schools is now in jeopardy because of the bad faith that's been shown by ministers in their public comments? And will you also give comment, please, to the potential for the next round of vaccinations to be centred in this area? Because I think that would give some comfort to those who are expected to be involved in this process. So, Taoiseach, I put it to you that Minister Foley and Minister Madigan are now part of the problem, that you and your office can be part of the solution, and it's important for you and your office now to step into this.
Thank you, Deputy Ríordáin. Taoiseach.
First of all, I accept the constructive nature of the Deputy's contributions. I don't accept the premise on which he's based his question. I believe Minister Norma Foley has led, first of all, successfully the reopening of schools in September to the Christmas period, and did so in partnership with management bodies, with the teacher unions, with the special needs assistance unions, and with the students' representative body as well, and all of the stakeholders in education. And it worked very, very well. And there was a strong underpinning of that by the public health advice from the Health Service Executive, dealing with many anxieties that various school communities had. Although it has to be said that 75%, I believe, of all schools in the country did not need to avail of public health support during that particular period. That said, there's a very high level of community transmission right now. And we are in a different phase of this pandemic in terms of that community transmission, which I think has to be acknowledged. And, you know, I think it's not fair to say there has been no consultation. There's been extensive consultation between the minister, between the department officials, between the unions and the representative bodies. And as I said last week, various spokespeople were of the view that we would be in a position on the 21st to open schools. And this was said publicly by some of the union representatives. Comments have been made about the minister which don't stack up either, in terms of this being a rush decision and so on. It wasn't. What emerged on Friday was a shared agreement on that guidance framework. But my sense is, and if we just reflect on the webinar itself, that it's up to maybe 16,000 participated in that. What does that show? I think it illustrates the anxiety out there, genuine, amongst quite a number of the workforce, which I think we have to take on board, and which maybe it has filtered its way through to the representative organisations as well, in terms of a reassessment of it from their perspective, and a recalibration of their approach. I would accept that we need to go forward on a shared basis. The Minister for Education will lead that with her department and will continue the engagement. I know today Minister Foley is meeting with many of the representative groups representing the children and the families of special needs. I take your point that we must not allow a divisive fallout from this in terms of those who provide education services and who look after children and the families of those they look after are the various interest groups. I think we must stand back from that. And I think one of the most effective things we can do now, given my observations, is we must all collectively do everything we can to get community transmission down. We are on the right pathway that way.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
And in the next while, that might give us an opportunity to effectively re-engage and get the outcome that everybody in the House desires.
Deputy Ríordáin.
I appreciate the Taoiseach's response, but I think he underestimates the damage that has been done in public commentary by both ministers. You mentioned a webinar on Monday. I'm aware of a webinar last night that while this whole process was falling apart, Minister Foley took it upon herself to attend a Fianna Fáil-sponsored webinar at 7 o'clock last night, in the middle of the entire process falling apart. And then we had a press statement from her yesterday evening, and then media comments this morning from herself and from the other minister in the department, which have been deeply, deeply unhelpful. So I'm saying to you, Taoiseach, now that other school reopenings are now at risk because of the bad fate and the bridges being burnt all over the place by both ministers, that their commentary is ill-tempered and needs to be de-escalated. And I feel now it's the responsibility of yourself and your office to step in here, because both ministers are not in control of this situation.
And I don't take the same interpretation of that interview as you have articulated. And in my view, if we get down to the nuts and bolts of this, much of what was proposed in this House formed the substance of the talks and the engagement between the partners and the Minister. And yourself, Deputy, you said, I think on the 4th of January, if schools are to close, the Department must assess middle course between all open and all closed. Can we find in-school solutions for certain categories like other countries? Children of frontline workers, DESH infants, special needs students, leaving cert students, and vaccinate as soon as possible. Now, I would support a lot of what you said there in that quote. That actually was what was discussed between the Minister and the Department, and agreed in terms of 50% attendance, in terms of alternate days, in terms of PPE, middle grade PPE, in terms of special help, in terms of childcare. Like, the full range of issues that were asked of the Minister were provided. That needs to be said too, and the Minister has to reflect her position in all of this. But I know that the Minister wants to go forward in a spirit of cooperation. On the vaccination question, we are guided by the National Immunisation Advisory Committee in respect of that.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
The fundamental benefit of the vaccination at the moment is to prevent and reduce mortality. and severe illness, and that's best applied in the nursing home residents and at frontline healthcare workers. At the
Thank you
moment,
very much,
Taoiseach. It's a